The following graph gives information about the life cycle of a frog. It has 6 stages in total and it is a continuous process. It starts with an egg mass which is produced by an adult frog. The eggs become small tadpoles. Later, legs are grown and the tadpoles become tadpoles with legs. The size has become a little bit bigger. After that, tadpoles come into the young frog stage where the frog has 4 legs but with a small, short tail. After the tail falls off, the frog becomes an adult frog eventually. The size becomes much bigger. The adult frogs can lay eggs so that the process can be continued. In conclusion, this image gives a vivid illustration of the life cycle of a frog. The following picture gives information of a sakura tree. In the lower right corner, there is a thick tree trunk on which some green leaves grow. From the trunk, one of which stretches to the upper left corner. From the picture, we can see a lot of twigs stretching from those branches. On the twigs, there are a lot of sakura flowers in blossom whose color is pink. On the background, we can see a blue, sunny sky. In conclusion, this picture is beautiful and informative. The following picture gives information about the number of U.S. households keeping pets. From the bar chart, we can see the value of cats is 42.7 million. The value of dogs is higher, which is 63 million. From the bar chart, we can see the highest value is for total, which is 84.9 million. The lowest value is for horses and saltwater fish, which is 1.6 million. In the bar chart, there are also other items, including freshwater fish and birds. In conclusion, this bar chart is very informative. The following graph gives information about the apartment floor plan. Usages of different areas are displayed on the map. In the upper area, there are the bedroom and the living room. In the lower left corner, there is a bathroom with a closet next to it. According to this graph, the kitchen is next to the closet on the right side. In addition, there is a balcony next to the kitchen. In conclusion, the floor plan is shown on the map. The following graph gives information about average tax rates for the highest income taxpayers in 1945 to 2009. The items include top 0.01% and top 0.1%. You can see from this graph that the value of top 0.1% in 1950 is around 42. You can see from this graph that the value of top 0.1% in 1990 is around 25, which is lower. You can see from this graph that the value of top 0.01% in 1945 is around 60, which is the highest. You can see from this graph that the value of top 0.01% in 2005 is around 21, which is the lowest. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about percentages by age and sex. The items include age groups, female and male. According to this graph, in male, the value of 85 plus is around 0.7, and that of 75 to 84 is higher, which is around 3. You can see from this graph that the highest value of female is in 25 to 34, which is 16.5. You can also see from this graph that the value of less than 4 is 7.8. In conclusion, 85 plus has the lowest percentage of population in female. The following graph gives information about average weekly household expenditure. According to this graph, the items include food, medical, transport, and holidays. You can see from this graph that the value of food is 123, and the value of medical care is 50. The value of transport is 124. According to this graph, the value of holiday is 33. As you can also see that the value of housing is 164. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about plastic bottle recycling. The steps include new bottles, refilling, used bottles, and plastic processing. And according to this graph, the first step is newly produced bottles, which are empty. According to this graph, the second step is to fill the empty bottles with beverage. You can see from this graph that the third step is to open the bottles and drink up it, followed by the fourth step is to transport used bottles back to the factory and use them as materials. The final step is the plastic materials turn into new bottles waiting for refilling. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about how tomatoes come to consumers. The steps include a tomato tree, transportation, filtering, packaging. According to this graph, the first step is the tomato tree, which grows many tomatoes on the branches. According to this graph, the second step is to transport tomatoes by a blue truck. You can see from this graph that the third step is to filter bad tomatoes out on a conveyor belt, followed by a crate full of good tomatoes as the fourth step. The final step is to fill the shopping cart with the good tomatoes for consumers. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about compositions of air. The items include oxygen, nitrogen, and other gases. You can see from this graph that in oxygen, the value is around 20%. You can see from this graph that in other gases, the value is around 1%, which is lower. You can see from this graph that in nitrogen, the value is around 79%, which is the highest. You can also see from this graph that in oxygen, the color is pink, and other gases include carbon dioxide, argon, and water vapor. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about the age group. The items include female and male. According to this graph, in 80 plus, the value of female age is around 0.4%. You can see from this graph that the highest value of female age is in 1 to 15, which is 15.5%. You can also see from this graph that the smallest value of male age is 0.8%. In conclusion, female and male have the almost same percentage in any age group. The following picture gives information about shopping in a stationery store. In the left half of the picture, we can see a white woman in pink sweater with her daughter in the arms. The mother and the daughter look at each other with smiles in their faces, and the daughter holds a new bag in the hand. In the right half of the picture, we can see the daughter carries the bag on the back. Also, she holds 6 colorful pencils in the hands in front of the chest. In conclusion, this picture is very informative. The following graph gives information about a floor plan. The items include a main hall, an office, a kitchen, and toilets. You can see from this graph that there is a main hall, which is in the upper area of the plan. You can see from this graph that there are toilets for males and females, which are on the right of the plan. You can see from this graph that there is a toilet for the handicapped, which is in the bottom right corner with a sign of wheelchair. You can see from this graph that there are a kitchen in the bottom left corner and an office in the middle of the plan. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about internet users who accessed via mobile phone. The items include 16 to 24, 55 to 64, and 65 plus. You can see from this graph that in 45 to 54, the value is around 32%. You can see from this graph that in 35 to 44, the value is around 50, which is higher. You can see from this graph that in 16 to 24, the value is around 70%, which is the highest. You can also see from this graph that in 65 plus, the value is around 8%, which is the lowest. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about the mosquito life cycle. It shows how the process is done. The items include adult, eggs, larvae, and pupa. You can see from this graph that the first step is the adult laying eggs into water. You can see from this graph that the second step is eggs developing as the larva below the water surface. You can see from this graph that the third step is the larva developing as the pupa. You can see from this graph that the next step is the adult emerging on the water surface. The final step is a new, fully developed adult flying out of water. In conclusion, this graph is very informative. The following graph gives information about rice in the palms. This is a very beautiful picture and it shows a number of things. According to this graph, at the left area, there is a handful of rice in someone's right palm. The color of it is white. You can see from this graph that at the right area, there is a handful of grains in someone's left palm. The color of it is yellow or golden. You can see from this graph that at the background, there is a person in white shirt with two black buttons on it. The weather is sunny. The sun casts a shadow on the white shirt. In conclusion, this picture is very informative. This picture gives information about correct and incorrect postures. It is a very interesting picture because it shows a number of things. According to the picture, at the left area, there is a man sitting on the chair. He sits very straight and his eyes are looking at the computer screen and his hands placed naturally on the keyboard. According to the picture, at the right area, the man is sitting on the chair and his back is hunched bend over and his hands placed too close to the table. In conclusion, this picture is very informative because it gives information about correct and incorrect postures. The bar chart shows us the population growth in the US. When it comes to 1790, 1800, the population is around XXX. After that, the population began to decrease to during 1800, 1810. Finally, the population decreased to 1810 to 1820. In conclusion, the population growth in the US shows us that the population may be undergoing negative growth in these periods. The following graph gives information about fungus gnat life cycle is about 28 days. It shows how the process is done. The steps include eggs, larva, pupa, and adult. According to this graph, the first step is eggs. According to this graph, the second step is from eggs to larva in 4 to 6 days. You can see from this graph that the third step is from larva to pupa in 12 to 14 days. You can also see from this graph that the next step is from pupa to adult in 3 to 6 days. The final step is from adult to eggs in 7 to 10 days. In conclusion, the process will repeat. The following graph gives information about pencil length. The items include New Jersey, Chicago, and Michigan. According to this graph, in Chicago, the length of the pencil is around 46.75 and that of New Jersey is higher, which is around 50.680. You can see from this graph that the highest length of the pencil is in New Jersey, which is 50.680. You can also see from this graph that the lowest length of the pencil is Virginia, which is around 18.950. In conclusion, New Jersey has the highest length of the pencil.